Good afternoon, Seminole baseball fans and Ole Miss fans. And today, here we are joined here by LSU alum and current Ole Miss head baseball coach Mike Bianco. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm good, Rags. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. I appreciate your time. And hey, let's start at the beginning here with growing up with baseball there in Pinellas County. They're playing for Seminole High School there with the Warhawks.
Well, it seems like such a long time ago. I'm 56, and as you mentioned, the head coach at Ole Miss, and starting my 24th year here. But yeah, it all started, in Pinellas County, and before we got on the air, we were talking about our upbringings, and when we moved to Pinellas County in 1972, my family from Wilmington, Delaware, so. I'm actually a Yankee. And so when you're the head coach of the Rebels, you try to not mention that, but I guess the cat's out of the bag now. So, yeah, so we moved to Florida when I was a young boy. Lived there in Del Prado, went to Oakhurst Elementary School, then on to Seminole Middle School, and then to Seminole High School. But what a blessing it was, and a lot of times, like most young people, you don't realize the blessings until later in life, and the things that you were so fortunate to have. But I was so fortunate to grow up in an area where baseball was important. Baseball was good. A lot of great coaches, a lot of nice facilities, and a great community. So great school system there, in the Seminole area, and was fortunate to play go to middle school there and high school. Play for I call the legendary Bill Brinker. There and play a lot of really good baseball and have a lot of great teammates. I actually last weekend, not this Labor Day weekend, but the weekend prior to, I was down in the Seminole area visiting a couple of my old high school buddies, Rob Caravino and Kurt Latzo. We got together and just hung out for a weekend. So still some Seminole High School baseball players, hanging out. But a lot of great memories. And again, I feel very fortunate to have grown up in that area where again, baseball was important.
Yes, and like we did talk about before we started, I mean, my brother Mike Ragsdale is 3 years older than me, but with him being middle school and pitched and making all-star teams there at SYAA and living down there in the Seminole area, I started doing the stats and everything. So definitely paid attention to Seminole High School baseball, even though, when my brother was going into his freshman year, we moved up to Virginia. But, that area with the weather, you start practicing in January, start playing at the end of February, begin to March, then all stars, then fall ball. I mean, it's only like November, December that you can't play baseball down there.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And baseball's changed and youth baseball's changed over the years and with travel baseball and all of that. But, even growing up and playing in Pinellas County in the Seminole area back in the 70s and 80s, we didn't play fall baseball. There wasn't fall baseballs. And so, like most young people growing up, I played football and basketball and, baseball in the springtime. And you're right. Once January got, that was our spring, right? It was right after Christmas, January, you started practicing baseball, and you can do that obviously in Florida. But my point is that they didn't have fall baseball back then, not until probably the very early 80s. We started playing a little bit fall baseball, and that, I kind of gravitated towards that. That's really what happened is my last 2 years, I didn't play high school football. I ended up playing, fall baseball. So I didn't, I had a long conversation with my father and knew that there wasn't probably a lot of room for a 5'9" linebacker, in college. And so I, gave up the football cleats for the baseball cleats in the fall.
Yes, and so after Seminole High School, I mean, starting off their community college there in Florida, before you got the opportunity to go on to LSU and play for Coach Bertman.
Yeah, we, out of high school, I always dreamed, not of playing Major League Baseball. I always dreamed of playing college baseball. And I knew professional baseball, may be an option, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. I got drafted out of high school, I believe in the 13th round, by the Boston Red Sox, and it just wasn't really an option for me in my mind. And I had my mindset that I wanted to go to college. But again, recruiting was a lot different than it is now. And the truth of the matter is, I got recruited by a few 4-year schools, smaller 4-year schools, and nobody that really interests me. And so I went to junior college. I went to Indian River Community College, which is on the east coast of Florida, so across the state on the Atlantic side,
Right.
in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is about 110 miles north of Miami, right up I-95 in the Florida Turnpike.
Right.
Played there for 2 years, and during that era, I really enjoyed it. Played a ton of baseball. The junior college system in Florida was so strong, still is strong.
Right.
And then I started getting recruited pretty heavily by Florida State and Miami, and I really thought that's where I was going to end up going. But as can happen in recruiting, it just kind of changed directions, and those guys decided to recruit. I was a catcher, and they decided to recruit a high school catcher versus a junior college catcher. And so I was kind of, back to square one, if you will, as far as where to go. And then the next week, I got a call from Louisiana State University and LSU. And the truth of the matter is, I didn't even, growing up in South Florida, I didn't even know where Louisiana was, and it was over near Texas somewhere. But I did know of their coach, a guy by the name of Skip Bertman. And Coach Bertman was the pitching coach and recruiting coordinator at the University of Miami when they won their first national championship in 1982, and had become the head coach at LSU in '84. And now this is the fall of 1986. So it was back in the early days of LSU, and they had just gotten back from their first College World Series appearance. And so I wanted to play really good college baseball, and at that point, LSU seemed like the best option.
Yes, and a previous guest on my podcast was definitely LSU alum and current Orioles broadcaster and covers a lot of college baseball. But Ben McDonald came on a previous episode.
Yeah, Ben was my teammate at LSU.
Yeah,
And
right.
so Ben was the number one pick in the 1989 draft, as your listeners probably know by now. And he was far and away the best college baseball player at the time. And so him, being a first round pick, obviously it was, quite an honor. But the team that I played on at LSU, we had 8 future big leaguers that played on that one college baseball team that made it to the College World Series in 1989. So great time in my life. And one of the neat things that you wish for, I think all kids that go to college is, they kind of, and I don't just mean athletes, but, to get, I left home, 12 hours away, and, grew up, and kind of figured some things out and graduated from college, and, fortunately got to play a lot of great baseball with some great guys there at LSU, and memories that, like my ones at Seminole that I'll cherish and remember forever.
Yes, and with preparing here for this episode, I mean, you also there in the early to mid '90s also got an opportunity to be an assistant
Yeah.
back at LSU. So just talk about going back to your alma mater and where you played, and now you're part of the coaching staff.
Well, it's kind of a funny story because I'm the first person in my family to graduate college on either side. And so when I went to college, I mean, I guess kind of how I alluded to it earlier, I just wanted to play college baseball and enjoy that. And not that I didn't really aspire. I mean, I would have loved to play Major League Baseball, but I was drafted 3 different times and ended up not signing a pro contract really because I wanted to finish my college, education. Still had a summer school and 1 fall semester left after my senior year to graduate. And I promised my mother that I would finish school, and so I did that. And I remember Coach Bertman asking me at LSU, "You're going to be a coach?" Because I used to work as camps, summer camps and winter camps, and I said, "Oh no, sir." And he said, "Well, why?" And I said, "Well, you guys don't make enough money." And of course, he laughed at me. But my perspective was, I wanted to graduate from college and have a career in something. I didn't know what that something was. I thought it would be in some area of business. And so after graduating in 1989, I went back to home to Seminole and got a job in Tampa as a financial planner. And so now I'm a failed financial planner. I did it for 2 months, and it was just miserable and missed baseball and not necessarily playing, but going out on the field every day, being part of a team, with a common goal every single day. And so I called Coach Bertman up and I said, "Hey, you asked me about coaching. I decided I want to do that. What do I need to do?" And he said, "Well, I don't have a position open, but Jim Wells at Northwestern State, which is a small Division I school in Natchitoches, Louisiana, is looking for a graduate assistant." And so the coach at Northwestern State, Jim Wells, was a graduate assistant at LSU when I played. And so I went back up there to Northwestern State, which is about 3 hours north of Baton Rouge. Got my master's degree, coached 2 years under Wells, and then in the summer of '92 went back to Baton Rouge as a full-time coach and was there. You heard the phrase "timing is everything." It was perfect timing. I was there for 5 years. We went to the College World Series 4 times and won 3 national championships in that span. In that 5 years was in Bertman's decade span where Bertman won 5 national championships in 10 years. And so it was perfect timing, while I was there. And again, got to, coach at my alma mater, but most importantly, got to coach under arguably the greatest college baseball coach ever.
Right. And during that span when you were an assistant at LSU, I mean, definitely with growing up in a military family, I was out west at this time. But how about the '96 College World Series and Warren Morris walking it off here with a home run?
Yeah, just a neat time. It's amazing how much things have changed. And one of the things I've noticed, what almost 30 years after that is I have one picture in my house that it actually has me during that moment. So for your listeners, Warren Morris hit a home run in the bottom of the ninth at College World Series to win the 50th anniversary of the College World Series, and walk-off win against Miami. So we were losing by 1 run at the bottom of the ninth. Had a guy at second base, and Warren hits a ball that just barely goes out. It's his first home run of the year. He had been injured most of the year. Anyway, just a neat story. But the reason I say that is because I have a picture of I had found years later. One of my buddies had a picture. It's like the only picture I have because I was coaching third. Right. And so, most of them are of Warren, which they should be, or him hitting home plate with all his teammates. But there was one really kind of panoramic shot of me coaching third, jumping up, and even the videos of him rounding the bases on CBS, you don't really see me. And so I have one picture that shows that I was there, and I was physically there. Nowadays, if that was to happen, you'd have a zillion different shots and angles, right? But back then it was that. But you're right; it was one of those. Just neat moments when you look back in time. But that's not just individually or personally, but that was one of the greatest moments in college baseball history. It was the first time that first and ever time that the College World Series was won, by a home run, in the bottom of the ninth.
Right. Yes, and all the listeners, that was at Rosenblatt Stadium, while the College World Series, still in Omaha, but at a different stadium today. But, so you get your head coaching job there at McNeese State. And after 3 years there, you get the opportunity to not only go back to the SEC, but to start where you currently are. And you talked about before we started taping how you're getting ready to start your 24th year there at Ole Miss.
Yeah, so I was an assistant 5 years at LSU, and as I mentioned, I was a graduate assistant 2 years prior to that, so 7 years, and I had just turned 30 years old. I thought I was getting old, and I've been doing this assistant thing for 7 years, and it was time to move on. And a head coaching job opened up at McNeese State in Lake Charles, Louisiana, about 2 hours west of Baton Rouge, right on I-10. And so I was fortunate enough to get that job, and just a neat place. And my wife Cammie and I always talk about what a neat stop it was in Lake Charles. The people were great, the city was great, and much like Seminole, baseball was important there, high school baseball, and of course, having its own college, a small Division I school there, was important. So I was there for 3 years, and we had some success. And then I was 33 years old when this job opened up in the summer of 2000. And to be honest with you, Rags, I wasn't really sure. I wanted to coach in the Southeastern Conference. Back then, we only had 12 members. And so there's only 12 of these jobs. When you look at that in that perspective, there's only 12 of these jobs in the world at the time. And so if you want to coach in the SEC, when one of those jobs come open, your antennas better go up. But really, and this may hurt some of the Ole Miss fans, feelings, but really, I didn't have a lot of, I don't want to say fond memories, but my expectations weren't great of the program, because in my short, baseball life and adult life, a kid that grew up in Florida, that went to LSU. And so playing Ole Miss, I knew they had a great stadium. I knew they had a great college campus, small, different than a lot of the, a little different niche than most of the SEC campuses, almost kind of a public school that has a kind of a private school feel because of the smallness of the enrollment in campus. A neat college town, different than most of the SEC schools. Some really pretty girls. But they never really won here. They had only been to postseason twice in 25 years, and that scared me. That really kind of pushed me back a little bit, because I was used to winning. I was fortunate to be part of a lot of really good programs and work under some great people, and I didn't want that to end. I didn't want it to end just because I was going to the SEC to go to somewhere where they didn't believe that they could win. And but again, it was one of the 12 schools. And so I came here on an interview. I met the athletic director at the time, a guy by the name of John Schaefer. And John was an all-conference shortstop at Auburn. And so he was the only AD in the Southeastern Conference that had a baseball background. And he wanted to win a national championship. And he said, "Hey, Mike, I think baseball's our best shot to win a national championship." And that's all I needed to hear. And that he was committed, the administration was committed. And so, back in the summer of 2000, I took this job.
Yes. And, leading up to 2022, there has been regular season success. There has been a couple SEC tournament success. 8 times to the super regionals, or 7 times going into 2022, one College World Series appearance. And, let's talk about, leading up to that Monday of at the end of May, where you're watching the selection show. The SEC tournament has a couple of play-in games, and then it's a double elimination 8-team tournament. You guys lose in the 8-9 game to Vanderbilt 3-1. So, talk to the listeners here on 2022, waiting to hear Ole Miss's name called there on the selection show.
Well, it was a tough few days, waiting, for that. For your listeners that may not be college baseball fans, you play regular season, 56 regular season games, and then you have a conference tournament at the end. The winner of the conference tournament's an automatic, much
Right.
like
Right.
basketball.
Basketball.
64 teams get in, and so we got eliminated in the conference tournament. We had a tough year. We had a team that at one point was ranked number one in the country. So at the beginning of the year, we were a top five team, and by week 5, we moved to number one in the country, and we're number one for 2 weeks in a row. And then just really kind of, as can happen to baseball, just kind of fell off. We first didn't play well, kind of a slump, if you will, but then we started playing better, but just didn't have a lot of good fortune. It seemed like every weekend we would come close, but we just couldn't win the weekend. We'd win on Friday and then lose the next 2 days. And so that just went on week after week. And then we just kind of dug a hole so deep for ourselves. We were 7-14 in conference play. Now we were still above 500 regular season,
Right.
but in conference play, we're 7-14, and usually that's a hole in our SEC that's so competitive that you're not going to be able to get out. But then we just got really hot. We swept Missouri at home. We went to LSU and swept LSU in Baton Rouge. 3 games. And so we ended up going, I want to say 7-9. Or 7-2 our last 9 games. They kind of put us in position at 14-16, where in the SEC you're kind of on that bubble if you're going to get to postseason or not. And so we felt to be comfortable making it to postseason, which we've made, I don't know, maybe 19 out of the 22 years that I've been here. So we had kind of flipped that page I talked about earlier, where we were, a constant in the postseason at the NCAA tournament. But now at this season, at 14-16, we're kind of that bubble team, and losing, the first game of the conference tournament, didn't leave a good taste in your mouth. But fortunately, on that Memorial Day, on Selection Monday, we heard our name announced, and we didn't care where we ended up going to Miami. We didn't really care where we were going. We just wanted to be in.
Right. And, there with the 16, seeds host, 4 teams there in the opening regional round. And you guys beat Arizona, beat Miami, close 2-1 game, and then really take it out on Arizona there in the regional final to move on to the super regional. And holy cow, there against Southern Miss, not only did you guys sweep, but your pitching staff put up a bunch of zeros there to go 2-0 and on to Omaha.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. And so as you read it, I think, back where, a team that started off the season, as I mentioned, preseason favorites in a lot of polls and moved to number one. And then we kind of fell off, there for, several weeks in a row, and then fought our way back. But it was different once we got to postseason, and we were on that level playing field. So for so long, because we had dug the hole so deep for ourselves, it just felt like we were coming, like it was so steep. We weren't sure if we would be able to get out. But once it was like back to 0-0,
Right.
64 teams, you just got to take care of your business. We played so long where we had to beat somebody, and then we needed somebody else to lose.
Right.
Now we didn't need that anymore. Now you just had to win your games and be good in your games. And you could see it was a breath of fresh air for our team. So we played super well down in Miami. And then we got to Southern Miss, who was one of our arch rivals. For your listeners that don't know, Southern Miss is, top 20 program every year, a team that's really, really good and has a great following at their place. So to play at their place, rivalry, in-state rivalry, type game. But, as you mentioned, we had been to 7 super regionals prior to and only won one of them, and so that was kind of our Achilles heel. Was we had a lot of great seasons, but couldn't win that last game to get to Omaha, and going to Southern Miss just, put a little more pressure on us. But our guys played so well, and, we didn't give up a run. As you mentioned, I mean, we won, I think, 10-0, 5-0 to punch our ticket to get to the College World Series.
Yes, and like we've talked about here when I was sharing with former guests, and I'm still looking to get this guy on, but when you opened up with the College World Series, you got another SEC team, and I know one of the Auburn assistants here with used to being at Old Dominion, Carl Notemaker, and
Mhm.
he's been a great assistant, but Auburn baseball, not only a great program, but here you open up the College World Series against another SEC team.
Yeah, very familiar foe. And when you look, there's 8 teams in the College World Series, and 4 of them, were from the SEC West, right?
Oh,
So they weren't just SEC teams, but these are
right.
teams in our division that we play regularly year in and year out. And so yes, we open up with SEC foe Auburn, who was really good, had a great year. Actually, we opened up conference play with them when we were ranked number 1 and beat them 2 out of 3 at their ballpark. But
Oh,
that was much earlier in the season, and
right.
then a week or so later is when we kind of hit our demise. But they were really good. They had Gonzalez on the mound, who was terrific, and it really, you could tell he was maybe a little uncomfortable in the first inning. We got a couple hits and were able to score a couple runs early that kind of, I think, kind of knocked some wind out of their sail. And he pitched great the rest of the game, but we extended the lead a little bit, towards the end of the game, and we're able to take game 1.
Yeah, yeah, and then to piggyback on what you just talked about, I mean, so then you guys take care of Auburn, and then it's another SEC team, Arkansas. So here you guys are in Omaha, and with the success that you guys had, it's like hey, we're playing our conference teams here in Omaha.
Yeah, and you're proud of your conference competitors, and obviously, you want as many SEC teams to make it. But once you get there, you probably would rather play somebody else. Yeah, there's some familiarity with playing them, but they're familiar with you too. So
Right.
there's really no advantage. You just know how good they are, and you know from playing. And we've played and had so many battles with Arkansas over the years, and regular season, conference tournaments, super regionals, and so to play them in game 2. But we were playing really well, felt really good about ourselves, and got an early lead and just kept continuing to extend that lead, and had a really good game in game 2 to kind of put ourselves in the driver's seat, right, in that winner's bracket game where we're basically 1 win away from getting to the national championship game.
Yes, and you guys did, you guys were, going through the winners bracket, and your pool did have a hiccup in one game, but then the if game won it. So you're the pool winners. You're going to the College World Series final. That's now for the last few years has been a 2 out of 3. There from the pool winners, and taking care of Oklahoma there, super regional, you guys swept, and then here in best the 2 out of 3 in the finals there in Omaha too, and you guys lift the trophy as the 2022 college baseball champs.
Yeah, just amazing. It's a really an amazing story, an amazing run, and I know it's our story, but I think it really resonated with me after the championship. How many people talked about it that weren't Ole Miss fans? Either national publications like Baseball America and others that talked about, as I mentioned, Warren Morris's home run. They talked about this in the 75th anniversary of the
Oh,
College World Series, that one of the greatest stories ever, because of our path that we've mentioned already a few times, where this wasn't just a Cinderella story. This was a team that played really well at the beginning of the year, was ranked number 1 in the country at one point in the season, then kind of fell off and came back and end up winning the national championship. And it's baseball, right? So, like,
right.
championship. We game one, we played really well, and extended the lead late, and won pretty handily the first game against Oklahoma. But then in game two, a real pitching duel that we were actually losing in the bottom of the eighth by a couple runs, and end up winning. And again, just because two totally different games. One, a huge offensive game in game one, and game two, a really pitching defensive type game. So just neat, just really proud of our guys. But probably the most touching thing, Rags, is when we got back. We have a great following here. We have great attendance. We average over 10,000 people a game here, and so we knew that we'd have a good following in Omaha. We knew that it would mean a lot to a lot of Ole Miss baseball fans. I just wasn't ready for how much it would mean to the Ole Miss family. And I mean, people that are maybe the casual fan or don't even pay attention much to baseball because they're football fans or whatnot, to have so many people in Omaha. We had 20,000 fans in Omaha in the College World Series. I mean, it was just so cool. And to get back and, a parade downtown in our awesome college town here, to end up with a celebration show that was live on the SEC network here. Just a, one of those memories that will forever be, embedded in your brain and in your memory banks.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry for going over, but appreciate your time. And with being a student athlete there at LSU, an assistant at LSU, and your time at Ole Miss, you've certainly seen not only the growth of all sports in the SEC, but definitely through baseball and with the SEC network and, differences in recruiting nowadays. And good luck there to the 2024 season for Ole Miss.
Thanks, Rags. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Sure, no problem. And just one last thing here there with Seminole. It's nice to see the Bucks are winners these days, and it's awesome to see the Rays, their Major League Baseball there in St. Pete area.
It really is. I thought about that when I went and visited, a couple weeks ago. That when I was growing up, the Bucks weren't very good.
Right. No.
They had just started there in the mid '70s, and through my high school days, maybe they needed me to move away for them to be good. And of course, the Rays weren't even there yet. But the Rays, do a terrific job. I think they're starting to draw more, than they used to, and because I always felt bad that they've had such a great organization for such a long time that the people down there need to support them. That's one of the great franchises in Major League Baseball, and of course, the Bucks have had a lot of success over the last few decades. So really cool, and really thankful, that like I said earlier, that I grew up in such a wonderful place.
Yes, and thanks again for your time, and go Ole Miss.
Thanks, Rags.
All right, see you.